Catch Texas in Color every Wednesday morning at 11 a.m. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. This is Texas in Color. Um, I've been trying to get some candidates on that's running for the chairman and chairperson. And I got Kendall on right here. And I liked the first forum we were in. You know, he was telling it like it is. So, and I realized when the forum went on, you really didn't have that much time to really go into details on what you wanted and what you could bring. So that's one of the reasons why I send invitations out to all the candidates to come on the show so they can sit down there and, you know, really explain what they mean, what they didn't get a chance to. So that's what we're here for right now. So good afternoon, Kendall.
Hey, I'm so happy to be here. Yeah, I have a bit of a tendency to tell it like it is.
And that's what we want. We don't want nothing sugar coated.
I'm an East Texas guy, and that's just kind of how we operate. We're a little rough around the edges, but we're just trying to get stuff done.
Okay. Now, can you share a little bit about your background and what inspired you to run for the TDP?
Yeah, so I decided to run for the Texas Democratic Party chairman because, frankly, I think that uh, a perspective like mine is kind of missing at the table, and that's the perspective of a grassroots activist and somebody who's in the fields, kind of throwing down every election. I grew up in East Texas, outside of Texarkana, in a little town called New Boston. I graduated high school in Sulphur Springs in Hopkins County. I went to college at Sam Houston in Huntsville in Walker County. And, I've been doing politics for a long time. I grew up on a Purple Hull pea farm, and I have lesbian mothers. And so when I was 12 years old, Republicans were writing bills to take kids like me with same-sex parents out of our homes and put us in foster care. And so I always tell people the hardest part about having two moms isn't having two moms. It's the people who had a problem with me having two moms.
Yeah.
And so, I wasn't ready for somebody to start tearing my family up. And so I started knocking on doors and advocating for Democrats. And, as time evolved, I mean, it's clear that the Democrats are right on a whole list of issues, not just that one. So I'm 34. For the last 22 years, I've served on every level of our party. I've been a precinct chair. I've been a county chair. I've been a member of the state Democratic Executive Committee. And I currently serve as one of the vice chairs of the state party as the finance chairman. And I've been nominated for the Senate in East Texas in one of the most conservative districts in the state of Texas, where I felt like everybody kind of ignored me and wrote me off because it wasn't a winnable district. But I overperformed the ballot significantly. And then I also was a candidate in one of the bluest parts of the state in Dallas County, where I won. And I'm currently serving as one of the directors of the Dallas Central Appraisal District. So I've seen the party from all these different angles, right?
Mhm.
I know how bad the messaging has been for the party because I've been on the ground in the fields knocking on doors. And so I just think that our next chairman needs to be somebody that's less focused on how to get a bunch of consultants in Austin and DC paid, and are more focused on how to keep people that are in the field doing the work happy, and to resource them and make sure that they can do their work on the ground as best and efficiently as possible. And so that's why I'm running. I think I'm uniquely qualified to be able to do that.
Okay. So the biggest question to me are the blacks in Texas that didn't come out as we wanted them to vote. So what do you believe the biggest challenge facing black Democrats in Texas today?
Well, I think that you're absolutely correct that that's what the party needs to be focused on. There were 1.3 million Texans who voted in 2020 that chose to stay home in 2022. Of that 1.3 million, 1.1 million were Democrats. And a lot of that would be people who didn't really feel like the Democrats were worth showing up for, because when the Democrats get elected, they may not feel like the Democrats show up for them. I think that it's really important that we are talking to that group of people to figure out why they stayed home, because the primary objective of the Democratic Party is to make sure your Democrats are showing up to vote and not taking different communities for granted. Uh, Nobody wants to take their cousin to prom. Okay. You only go to prom with your cousin if you're kind of forced to and you have to. And that's how I think a lot of people have kind of felt about the Democratic Party. It's like taking your cousin to prom. I'd rather be courted. I'd rather somebody tell me I'm the prettiest girl in high school and try to take me to the prom. But instead, I feel like I have to go with my cousin because they're there. Our party has to meet people where they're at. They need to be showing up and being present in people's communities. Okay. And so when you talk to those Democrats, those 1.1 million, and they say things like the Democrats don't fight hard enough. The Democrats, whenever they get power, they don't know how to wield it. They don't know how to show it. When they're asked to compare us to animals, they compare us to things like turtles and snails. Okay. The Democrats need to start showing up and fighting. And if you can't deliver, get caught trying. And that's where I think, particularly in the Black community, young communities around the state with people under 40 and the Hispanic community, they just don't see a party that's throwing down for them. You're saying democracy's on the line. You say that the country as we know it is slipping through our fingers. Act like it. Act like it. You know, our leaders are standing up and saying things like, well, we're not in control. What do you want us to do? Or they say things like, oh, we got big wins because we got good seats on committees. Well, people don't care about that. They care about what's happening in their homes and with their families, right? And it needs to be made very clear. Electing Texas Democrats means lower taxes, better schools, safer streets. And electing Republicans means richer rich folks. And when we get elected, if we are not delivering or getting caught trying to deliver, then folks in the Black community and young communities, Hispanic communities, all across this Texas, across this state, they're going to stay home because what's the point of showing up if we aren't showing up for them? And so that to me is kind of the crux of it.
Okay, so wouldn't you say that Republicans came out 2 years ago, hitting the local level, getting commissioner court, getting school boards? They knew what they were doing and what led up to the general election. And basically, Democrats, we got our butts kicked. I'm gonna say it, we got our butts kicked. So how would you come along and focus on the rural, the community? What do we need to do to step up our game there? I would say number one to me is vote for your local government. That's where we need to start at. Forget DC, forget Austin, worry about home first and build from there and spread out from there. So,
Yeah.
what do you think about that idea?
Yeah, my mom always used to say, keep your own front porch clean, right? And that's what we need to be doing is working on our local communities. I'm going to do a little correction of you there. It wasn't just in 2022. Republicans have been doing that for 20 years.
Yeah, that's right.
They've been focused on their local governments and getting this bench built. And you know, if there's no concerted effort from Democrats to get people elected to utility districts, city councils, school boards, county commissioners, mayoral seats, then who is waiting in the wings to run for higher up seats? You need people that are known for delivering good government in their local communities. It's all about quality of candidates, and I believe candidates matter. And so we used to have a program with the party called Project Lift. It was a project where we used to train candidates to run in these types of races. It has since kind of fallen by the wayside. It kind of exists and comes in and out. I'd kind of like to get it back to its former glory and maybe get it even a little stronger. Where if you're wanting to run for local office, you can go and sign up here at the Texas Democratic Party website. And we are now putting you through a training regimen on what does it mean to build a campaign. Because a lot of people, I don't even know how to run for office if I wanted to start doing it, right? How do you juggle vendors? How do you set up a budget? How do you do a finance plan? How do I file my paperwork? And so that's kind of what Project Lift would handle. I think that that's a really important project that we've got to get focused on and to try to bring that back. In addition to that, there's filing candidates, and then there's how do we help our organizers that are on the ground doing the work. Right now, if you sign up to be a precinct chair in the party, you don't ever really get a lot of guidance of what does a precinct chair do. Or what's your expectation? So I want to put on an onboarding. Just like if you start a new job, you get to go into an onboarding that says, here's who's in charge, here's what your expectations are, here's what the company culture is. So that anytime that we have a new person into the apparatus, whether they're a precinct chair, county chair, SDEC member, they get put into an onboarding system where we teach you how to work the voter file and we show you who to call if you're having trouble. We've got to start setting a tone that we're all on the same team together, working together. Because right now, all these Democrats are spending more time fighting each other than fighting Republicans. And it's just not helpful. It's not helpful. And that tone comes from the top.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. So you just pinpointed leadership and strategy. So how will you work to increase Black voter engagement and turnouts in Texas on our next election coming up?
Yeah, so I've actually put a plan together that stretches across all of our constituency caucuses, okay? And just for those who aren't familiar, so the Texas Democratic Party, here's how it's structured. You have a chairman, a vice chair, and then you have your officers of the party. There's 5 of them. And then they had the State Democratic Executive Committee. Those are people who, there's 2 people of different genders elected in every congressional district in the state. Then you have constituency caucuses, and that's to make sure that we have guaranteed diversity on our board. That would be the Black Caucus, the Hispanic Caucus, the Youth Caucus, the Disabilities Caucus, the Veterans Caucus, the AAPI, Asian American Caucus. Though all those different caucuses exist so that we make sure that those voices are sitting at the table. But it's been my opinion that those constituency caucuses are underutilized, if utilized at all. And so, what I've put together is a plan to utilize those caucuses. What I think we should do is we should make a strategic plan for the party and say, here, we want to set this basic standard for everywhere across the state that we're competing in, where we're providing resources and training where we can. But then we have a strategic plan that says, what are the districts that we're targeting? Districts that we're targeting to hold, districts that we're targeting to flip, and districts that we're targeting to turn out higher vote numbers within, because that's how you flip the state. And then you start at the top of the strategic plan. Whatever the top target is, we say, what is the constituency that makes the most sense there? And let's say maybe it's Jasmine Crockett's district. Maybe we want to turn out more voters in Jasmine Crockett's district. Well, if that's the case, then we go to the Coalition of Black Democrats and the Black Caucus, and we say, y'all are a constituency that makes a lot of sense here. So who is a person that y'all want us to hire on the ground in that district? Because what we've been doing in the past is we say, oh, we'll hire one Black constituency outreach person for the whole state of Texas. And if you do that, you're setting people up to fail. There's no way a person can do that. And so let's be strategic. And, we don't have the resources to do it everywhere. So let's do it where it counts. So let's hire a Black constituency person in that district. And then they go around and they meet with faith leaders. They meet with business leaders. They meet with community and civic leaders that are within that community. And we do it year round, not just when there's an election. And we do it with local people, not with folks that we brought in from DC to come in and do it. If you do that, you build meaningful relationships in those communities. You have a contact point that people know and trust within that community and that we're present. And we just haven't done that. And so I think we can do that with every constituency caucus, whether it's the Black constituency caucus there, or let's say a district like Mahela-Pleasa in Southern Collin County. An Asian American Pacific Islander constituency person would make a lot of sense there. There are a lot of districts around the state where we just haven't been intentional about caring about showing up and meaningfully being involved in a community, not just in a way where we're begging for votes.
Okay. What steps will you take to increase youth engagement and bring more of minority voters into the Democratic Party?
Well, so I think I'm a little youth or uniquely qualified to handle the youth engagement piece. I'm 34 years old. If elected, I will be the youngest chairman that the party has had since 1956. We have not had an under 40 chair in a very long time. And what that means is that the way that young people receive information and messages is not often represented in our party's communication structure. Things like this show right here. You're not mainstream media, but you've got a lot of people that listen to you and care about the folks and the issues that you're talking about. Does our party ever bother to show up to these alternative forms of media? I think young people primarily get their news from things like podcasts and TikTok. They get it from influencers who build communities and then politics leaks into it, not from people who are just constantly championing politics. I think the way you meet young people is where they're at. It's the same thing with black voters and Hispanic voters. Let's not pretend like I know where all black voters congregate, okay? I'm a white dude from East Texas. We need to start acknowledging what our strengths are and what our weaknesses are and enlist people who know those communities better than me to tell us what we can do to better outreach there. But the idea that you put out a press release and go on MSNBC and think that that's going to reach people, that's the way of the past. That's how you reach people that are above 65. It's not how you reach people that are under 40. And so I think that we need to be have a concerted effort of alternative forms of media, meeting people where they're at and not being afraid. Stand up on whatever that we advocate for what we believe because it's the right thing. Okay. So be informed and show up. I'm not afraid of going on right wing radio or going on to a Joe Rogan podcast or whatever, because we need to show up and present what our perspective is. Because if we're absent, then our perspective is absent.
Hmm. I like what you said about getting on the other side programs. And I watch some of those shows when they are on there, and they still stuck with that same mindset and still just lying straight to their teeth. And when they're confronted with the truth, um, they want us to get angry and mad. But if we poise and hold our cool and to prove to them that they're wrong, and that's one thing, they would never admit when they're wrong.
Right.
And it was the saying was, if you tell a lie long enough, people are going to start believing it. And that's what's been happening. There have been blatant lies out there. There's no fact check. They just go with it and go on their way. Because, once that horse is out of the barn, you can't put it back in there because once it's out, so it's up to people to believe whether it's right or wrong. And
Yeah.
and when we get social media involved with that and pushing the same narrative, people are gonna start believing that. And when you tell them the facts and the truth, they look at you like you lost your mind. This is what I heard on TikTok, and that's where our young voters come to play at. Do you think the Democratic Party, um, not necessarily, but avoiding the young voters when they should be embracing them?
I don't think that they're avoiding them. I think that they are taking groups for granted. And that's not just with young people. I think it's with black voters. It was largely with Hispanic voters. I think that they have operated with this mindset of, well, we already have these people, so let's try to get these people. But what happens is you have now neglected all these people that you thought you had, and they start to leave you, or they start to get tired of your bunk. I don't know if I'm allowed to use profanity. I'm sorry. Sometimes that slips in. They're tired of your stuff, right? And so I just think people vote with their guts, not with their heads.
Mhm.
Okay. And as Democrats or as liberals, we tend to be a little overly educated, a little overly cerebral, and we try to over explain things. People want to feel like we're there fighting for them, right? You can give them all the data and stats you want to. They got to feel it in their guts. And right now, people just don't feel like the Democrats are throwing down the way they need to be throwing down. They're saying things like this isn't normal, and they've said that for like 8 years. Well, everybody knows it's not normal, and there's a large contingency that doesn't like normal because normal hasn't worked for them. Normal has made sure that they don't have the ability to purchase a home. Normal has made sure that they cannot afford to put food on their tables and they stress out going grocery shopping. Normal hasn't worked for working people. So when Democrats campaign on how everything Donald Trump does isn't normal and it's outside the mainstream, well, sure, that's true, but it also doesn't resonate that you're going to try to make people's lives better. You're going to try to make it the way it's always been. And the way it's always been has been against working people like you and me and in favor of the billionaire class. No one benefits more from us working people fighting each other than the billionaire class. They want us fighting with each other so that we aren't looking at them. This is not a culture war, it's a class war. Working people need to fight for their seat at the table. And to me, that's the message that I don't think the party has hit on hard enough. If our brand is not synonymous with economic justice, making sure that you can afford to take care of your family and provide for your family, then we're not doing our job.
Which brings to this question. Boy, you must know what questions I have.
What is it?
Um, Fundraising and finance strategies. What would you be able to do to implement some type of structure with that? Because rumors has been saying that the party has money, only going to give it to certain candidates and all that stuff. So how would you centralize all that where everybody gets a piece of the pie?
So fundraising is a big task, okay? And just to put things as a frame of reference for people who haven't been very involved in the party, um, the Texas Democratic Party's budget in an election cycle is usually $2 to $3 million, which might sound like a lot, but when you have up to 40 staff members, that's not a lot of money. Okay. We have to run an entire voter protection team, an entire data team, entire primary administration team, in addition to the political work that we do at the party. And so that budget just isn't going to cover it in a state like Texas, because you look at states like Wisconsin, where they could be anywhere from 20 million to $100 million in a cycle. And like a state the size of Texas with 40 media markets being at a fraction of that budget is part of the reason that you don't see the party present. Okay. So with that being said, we have to get serious about how does more money come through. Part of the reason that candidates feel like they don't get help from the party financially is because they don't. That money just hasn't been there. So we've got to have a couple buckets. One bucket needs to be grassroots, small dollar contributors. Okay. If you're listening to this show, you are a potential donor for the party, right? We should be asking you to please go to txdemocrats.org and subscribe to be a monthly contributor of $3, $5, $10 a month. Okay. We need to get the number of people that give monthly to our party up to about 10,000 folks. Okay. And I think that's very doable in a state where 6 million people voted for Joe Biden, in a state where, over 4.5 million voted for Kamala Harris. Surely we can get 10,000 people to give monthly to the party. Okay. Those small dollars add up. And what they mean is that we don't have to go grovel to rich people every time that we have a problem. It means that we are funded by working people in this state. That is how you make sure that the party is advocating and has their message in the right thing. So that's one bucket. The next bucket is larger contributions. And these are contributions that are, $500, $1,000, $10,000, $100,000. If we're able to get those kinds, there has to be a strong plan put into place to cultivate those types of donations. In an ideal world, we would have campaign finance reform where, there are caps on contributions, but we can't put ourselves in a position where Republicans are taking in large amounts of money and we aren't because then we're not on the same playing field. So putting that program together where we're traveling around the state and frankly to more diverse communities, it's been my experience that we're really only asking rich white people for money. But there's a lot of money in the Black community. There's a lot of money in the Hispanic community. Like those folks are willing to donate too, but nobody ever bothers to ask them. And then it reduces what their level of influence has been within the party because they just aren't in those fundraising circles, right? And so then that gets them cut out of the rooms where they can meet other folks that are influencers around the state. And so I think there's a lot of discussion to be had there about equity in our fundraising there and making sure that we're talking to a bunch of different communities. Then there's a third bucket. And the third bucket is something I haven't ever seen the party really do. And that's talk about negotiating with wills and endowments. Let's say that, I mean, boomers were kind of the last generation that were able to purchase low cost real estate. And so there's a lot of places or a lot of boomers that may have, downtown offices that they don't know what to do with when they die. Well, what if we had a mechanism in place where you could write the Texas Democratic Party into your will and donate that building to the Texas Democratic Party so that the local community can have a free headquarters forever, right? Like we don't think through long-term structures. If you're a super wealthy person who has, $100 million and you're writing your will, what if you left a $5 million endowment to the Texas Democratic Party so that we could fund some of these director level positions in perpetuity? So we're not having to fundraise for it. We're setting up endowments to fund these different departments. That's a little bit more strategic, long term thinking that I think has been missing. So I think it's a three-legged stool. I think all three of those legs have to be strong.
Okay. So I want to talk about campaigns now. We've seen some great campaigns on the Democratic side, some horrible ones. I'm not going to sugarcoat it because it's out there. So how can we get the great campaigns like Jasmine Crockett, for instance? How does she campaign and win that? I know every county and every city, we can't just use a cookie cutter and that's going to be enhanced. But how can we implement some of that, some successful people who ran and won? How can we use that throughout the state to other candidates that's running for office?
Look, every candidate has different strengths and different weaknesses, right? Someone like Jasmine Crockett, rock star, communicator, messenger, right? Folks like James Tallarico, Veronica Escobar. Those are folks that you put them in front of a microphone and you know that whatever falls out of their mouth is going to be gold, right? Then you have some candidates that we have around the state who are policy masterminds. Like you get them into a room where they're writing policy and they're brilliant. I mean, they can just get some incredible things done. I'm talking about people like Julie Johnson, Vicki Goodwin, that are just real masters of their craft, right? Everybody brings something different to the table. And I don't personally want all of our candidates to be the same. I want us to be a team that has diverse talents. But what it requires is if we have candidates that may not be as good of messengers as people like Jasmine Crockett, then we need to make sure that we are providing assistance to those types of candidates on how they could message better. Here's some tips on what you can do. And you message in different areas, kind of different ways. I don't think that the way I communicate would go over very well in Jasmine Crockett's district, right? But if you send me out into East Texas, West Texas, somewhere in the coastal bend, hill country, some of those people might really resonate with the way that I think about things as kind of a farm kid from East Texas. Everybody, and that would be different for somebody that's from the valley or from everybody brings something different to the table. And as a party, we have to start thinking instead of saying, that person's 80% good, 20% bad, and because they're 20% bad, I don't like them. We have to start saying that person's 80% good, 20% bad, so I'm focused on that 80%, and we're on a team together, and how do we maximize on it? And it's the same way with our candidates. Different candidates have different strengths, and we have to make sure that we have the training in place to help candidates where they may be falling short because nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect. I haven't known you long enough to know if you're perfect or not, Mr. Gordon, but I'm going to assume that you're not. And so if that's the case, we got to be able to be on a team and pick up the slack. That's how I think we do it.
Okay, last question for you. What sets you apart from your other opponents, and why should they choose you for the chairperson?
Everybody that's running for chairman right now, chairperson right now, they are awesome. They're good folks, and I really have enjoyed my interactions with them. That being said, there is something that's different about me from everybody else. And it's that I've given my entire life to this party and this movement, and I've never given up on you. I have done this since I was 12 years old. I've done it when things were good. I've done it when things were bad. I have done this when I was exhausted and I was tired, but I never gave up. I worked within the party to try to improve it and make it better. And that was transparent budgets, implementing permanent auditing. That stuff isn't sexy, but it's important, okay? And I've never stepped away. And a lot of my opponents in this race are nice folks. They really have thrown down, but they haven't been in it as long and consistently as I have. In the last election, I put 35,000 miles on my truck, driving around the state, being helpful where I could be helpful. And sometimes that meant dropping off a pile of signs. Sometimes that meant dropping off a check. Sometimes that meant sitting at my desk and trying to help people get through their compliance reports, right? But I'm one of those people that are like, put me in, coach. Like, let's figure it out. And I like getting in the nitty gritty and being helpful. That's what makes me different, is that I'm a workhorse. I'm not a show horse. And I genuinely love this party and what it stands for. I exist today because this party fought for my family. And I think there's a lot of people who feel that loyalty to the Democrats, even though they might piss us off every now and then. There's some loyalty to the fact of what their history has meant to some of us and our ability to exist and operate. And that never leaves me as to what we're fighting for. This is not about me. This isn't about me getting a seat somewhere. This is about making sure that our party is improved and better and winning elections, focus on winning elections. That's where I think that I'm different. I think that I have a very diverse background within the party, seen it from a bunch of different angles, and I'm a workhorse ready to get to work.
Okay, so I see the next forum is taking place on the 22nd, Dallas Fort Worth. That's on a Saturday. You plan to be there?
Absolutely. Well, actually, for me, the next forum is tonight. I'm doing an event out in East Texas tonight.
Okay.
It's just me. The other candidates aren't there. But if anybody's listening and they want to come and join us in Jacksonville tonight, we would certainly love to have them. Um, I looked at the forums and I noticed that East Texas was left off, and so I went and had my own event out there to make sure that we were showing some love to East Texas. But the next forum where all the candidates are going to be on the stage will be at the DFW forum, and I will absolutely be there. I have not missed a forum, and I do not intend to.
Yeah, because then on the first you got Lubbock, and
Yes.
then you got a virtual forum on the 25th, and the last one is in Austin, Texas on the 28th, a day before the meeting. So it's almost like you have got to have everything going for you. But it's a campaign, and I applaud you from going from one end of the state to the other, and out there in East Texas. The things that we need, and you're showing some things that you want to do. And I want to say deeply, I appreciate you taking the time out and being on the show today. It means a lot to me and to fellow Texans to hear you one-on-one on what you really want to bring to the party.
Well, thank you. You know, one thing about me, even if people don't like me or they disagree with me, I show up. I show up whenever folks need help. And so I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I've loved being able to go to all these different forums because the way I see it is that if you aren't willing to show up to forums when you want something, how can we trust you to show up when you actually have the job? So I've loved being we went to the Rio Grande Valley. I went out, one of the first trips I went in my chairs race was out to El Paso. I think I'm the only candidate so far that even took time to go out there. And I know there aren't a whole lot of votes in my race out there. But to me, I'm from a forgotten part of this state. And I want to make sure everybody sees themselves represented in our party. And as chairman, I'm going to conduct myself the same way. I'll be present, I'll be active, and I'll be as helpful as I possibly can.
Okay, sir. We appreciate you once again coming on the show. And
Well, thanks for having me. I sure appreciate it.
and we'll see you down the line at the other forums.
I'm looking forward to it, man. Looking forward to it.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you for watching Texas in Color. Please tune in every Wednesday at 11 a.m. And please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification button so you'll be notified each and every time we go on live.